Hello, it's CATE STILLMAN with the Yogahealer Real Life Show, and I'm going to talk today about what is the Ayurvedic diet. This is part of our series on Ayurveda. We're having Ayurveda month here on the Yogahealer Podcast. So the first episode we did in this series is what is Ayurveda, and I gave you my take on that. Then I went into the doshas, the next few episodes. What is Vata dosha? What is Pitta dosha? What is Kapha dosha? And what is it like to have these constitutions? What's it like when this constitution goes out of balance? So I hope you listened to those, and I hope you related to who you are and also took action on the tips of how to help yourself thrive in your constitution. I hope you printed the Thrive tip sheets for your dosha. We have those in the show notes here. What is Thrive for Vata, Thrive for Pitta, Thrive for Kapha. I know when I first started learning about my constitution, I was 26 years old. Yeah, right around there. And my real first thought, my first big aha of understanding my constitution or my Prakriti, was like, how did I not learn this yet? Like, how did my parents not teach me this when I was 10, right? Like, how did I not grow up understanding how my body type's different than other body types, and how the energies that dominate my body type are balanced by certain forces and imbalanced by other forces, and then it's really actually quite easy to self-regulate and to self-design to have better and better experiences in a more and more empowered constitution. So I was shocked, and I gotta admit, I was pretty angry. I was really angry because I had headaches as a young child. My first memories, my first nightmares, like those really strong memories, like some of them waking, some of them sleeping, were of migraines and were of being constipated, like trying to get the poop out of my body. And when I look at that, it's like, oh my gosh, it was all so preventable. The allergies I had in high school that were just like, I was like mucus girl. Like I'd sneeze in Western Civ class and snot would go everywhere, and I'd run out of tissues and there'd be more snot. It was right after lunch, and my kapha would be excited from lunch and it would be on the move. It would start to move out of my body. And I looked back in my early 20s mid-20s learning Ayurveda, and I was like, that was optional. Those years of taking pills, I was known as the pill popper in my household because I was constantly taking Tylenol for the migraines. I was constantly taking Tavist D for my allergies and some other, I can't even remember, Chlora something. But I was constantly like taking these antihistamines, and it was so disempowering to not know how to eat for my constitution. It was so disempowering not to know just how to align my daily habits that I was going to do in the day anyways, but how to align them in order to thrive in my constitution. So that's so much of why we're doing this series on Ayurveda, is I hope that you're empowered by that. So I'm going to talk in this a little bit more about the diets, and I'll talk about what is the Ayurvedic diet and what are the diets for the different constitutions, because I didn't get into that as much in those episodes. I got more into what are these forces, what are the elements behind the forces, and what are the characteristics or the qualities of each of the forces that are these doshas. That dosha is just the word for force. That what are these energies, and how do we start to recognize them in our day-to-day life? Okay, so turning to what is the Ayurvedic diet. When I look at what's the Ayurvedic diet, I don't look at what is the diet that Western yogis imported from India, right? So I'm not going to talk about you need to go vegetarian and eat rice and mung beans and coconut oil and ghee and turmeric and ginger and the diet from the yogis in India. Although that's not a bad idea. But to me, that's not what the Ayurvedic diet is. Just like Ayurvedic herbs, and we'll do a show on that at some point. Those aren't necessarily, to me, the herbs from India. When I look at what is the Ayurvedic diet, is what is food? What is food according to Ayurveda? Right? What is nourishment according to understanding your constitution? So we get into a different level of complexity where it's not like these yes and no lists. It's more of notice the impact that different foods eaten at different times have on you, and see if you can find seamless digestion, what they call Sama Agni in Ayurveda. And Sama Agni is where you have what they call perfect digestion, balanced digestion. You're not farting, you're not burping, you don't get hyperacidity, you're not like tasting the food in your mouth hours later. You don't feel heavy after eating, you don't feel hyper between meals. Your energy's constant, you're smooth. What I find with Sama Agni is like you're really not paying that much attention to digestion and elimination at all, because you're just like, wow, everything's working perfectly. Isn't this convenient? Right? It's great to wake up, hydrate, and have a big, smooth poop move out of your body that's 18 inches long and get on with your day. Right? It's great to only need to eat 2 to 3 times a day as an adult and as an active adult, right? And not worry about food between meals, not worry about concentration, not worry about your energy bouncing up and down with hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia, but to have balanced blood sugar. So when you ask me like, what's the Ayurvedic diet? It's that. It's like whatever gets you to Sama Agni, right? In a way that you can know and understand how to design your digestion, absorption, and elimination, these 3 main phases. So it has less to do with mung beans and specific foods. It has so much more to do with understanding universal rhythms, that you are part of nature, that you are an evolutionary part of the cosmos that created you. And that the more you attune to the energies of nature, the more you attune to the weather, to the seasons, to the crops that are growing in your ecosystem, the more you attune to eating at the times of day when digestion is strong and eliminating at the time of day when elimination is strong, the more you're attuned to all that, you get to experience Sama Agni, and high fives for that. Like that's when life gets really interesting, because you're not wasting all of this energy on digestion and elimination, right? And then what happens there is you enter new levels of energy efficiency, which build your immune capacity. They build your ability for resilience so that you can actually handle more stress. They build your ability for adaptability so that you can go longer between meals without getting hangry, without becoming somebody else's problem. In this building this resilience and this adaptability, you're actually able to eat a much wider variety of foods. One of my favorite people to have on the show is Dr. John Douillard, and you can go back and listen to the 5 or so episodes I've done with Dr. Douillard, Douillard, and he wrote a book called Eat Wheat, and he's so funny to talk to, because like while everyone else was going gluten-free, he's like, if you actually strengthen your Agni, if you strengthen your digestive fire, if you strengthen your ability to digest, wheat's amazing. Like old world heirloom gluten, no problem. It's actually, I mean, Dr. Vasant Lad, many of you know who know Ayurveda know his name. He would say wheat is the meat for vegetarians because it's such a deeply nourishing grain. It's super high in kapha. It's dense, it's heavy, it's sticky, it's highly nutritive. And I'm not talking about like super processed, disgusting, GMO wheat, right? I'm talking about heirloom wheat. All right, so as we eat an quote unquote Ayurvedic diet, that's the measurement, is are we able to digest more deeply, more easily? Is our energy actually becoming more of a deep reservoir for us? Is our tissue healthy and strong? And if we're doing that, in my book, we're probably can check the box on that we're eating an Ayurvedic diet. All right, so now let me get a little bit into the 3 different types, like what the different constitutions need to pay more attention to in terms of diet. So we have our Vata types. Let's talk about our Vata types first. So Vata types, remember, this is the wind. These are the people that when that energy of Vata gets out of balance, which it tends to more easily, the more your Prakriti is of a certain force, right? The more your constitution has a dominant force, the more likely that force is to go out of balance. So Vatas tend to go out of balance in Vata, Pittas tend to go out of balance in Pitta, Kaphas tend to go out of balance in Kapha. Otherwise said, when people tend towards too much wind. Fire people tend towards too much fire. Kapha people, or water, earthy, bog people tend towards too much of, basically too much, is that sort of heavy liquidity. All right, so when you think of this, it's pretty simple. Ayurvedic diet, rule number 1, like increases like, and the opposites reduce each other. So the more wind you have, you want to do the things that are the opposite of the wind, which are the other 2 doshas. So Vata types, these are the light people. These are the ectomorphs. These are our tall, skinny, lanky, not curvaceous people, right? And they tend to forget to eat. They tend to be totally random. They love spontaneity. So forgetting to eat, eating at totally random times of day or night. And they don't allow that digestive fire to build. And I feel like I really went into that in the what is Vata dosha, what is Vata constitution, constitutional imbalances part of that Vata show. So please go back and listen to that because I'm not going to repeat that. As we have the discipline to eat at regular times of day, that starts to calm the wind down. Now, the qualities of Vata are dry and crunchy as we look at foods. It's foods that have a lot of ether or space. Like if you think of like how much space lettuce takes up compared to like a hunk of cheese. And now think on like the calorie by calorie. Try to get like 1,000 calories of cheese in a pile and 1,000 calories of lettuce in a pile. What's going to take up more space? Yes, you guessed it, the lettuce. So foods that have a lot of air in them, popcorn, raw leafy greens, those things can actually aggravate Vata. So we want to look at the qualities of the other 2 forces and the foods that are higher in those qualities. So Pitta foods that have more Pitta, they have more heat in them. These are the carminatives or the spices in our diet, like black pepper or cumin or fennel or oregano or basil or lemongrass. All of those have Pitta in them. They help digest. So the Vata diet should have more spices in it. It should have more warmth or heat. If we look at vegetables like celery versus beets, the beet is going to have more heat in it as it moves through the digestive tract. There's Vata, Pitta, Kapha food lists on the internet. You can look those up, or you can look on our tip sheets at yogahealer.com and go into the tip sheets and find that we have different lists of soups for Vata, Pitta, Kapha, salads for Vatas, salads for Pittas, salads for Kaphas. And you can get a sense, because the more you familiarize it, you'll be like, oh, that makes sense. All right, so the other force that obviously balances Vata is Kapha. So Kapha foods are moist, they're smooth, they're the comfort foods. I mentioned in the Kapha episode about like mac and cheese. Now, mac and cheese is actually a pretty good food for a Vata. If it's taken warm, if you add black pepper to it so that it's spiced, that can have a density to it that's really soothing and calming for a Vata type. Now, I've never talked about mac and cheese on the Yogahealer podcast, and I'm not a big fan of mac and cheese, but it just gives you an example. Vata types do really well with foods that are more liquidy, right? So in a soup medium or in a stew medium, that's great. So having like a curry, coconut, carrot soup it's a great food for Vata because you have the fat from the coconut, and you have some warmth from the curry and some actually warmth from the carrots. Carrots are a good grounded root vegetable. So all the root vegetables have more kapha in them than the leafy greens, which grow above the surface of the earth, which have more Vata in them. All right, so other things in terms of the Vata type diet. I mean, the real thing is eat at the same time of day, warm, moist, spicy, more on the oily side or fat dense foods will help Vatas get grounded. Vatas can't eat as much, right? 'Cause you don't have that strong power of digestion. So making sure that your food is dense enough that you're getting enough calories to have good, deeply sustained energy is the name of the game. All right, so what is the Ayurvedic diet for Pittas? Well, Pittas, again, they're intense, and so they burn a lot of calories, and they are the ones that will tend to get hangry. So for Pittas to also eat substantially, just that same recommendations I had for Vatas, but their foods can be less spicy, less spice intense, on the cooler side of spices. And that really helps. Pittas don't do well, like I talked about in the Pitta episode, they don't do well with fried foods. My kid, oh my gosh, we were in Paris in August, and she had quiche. But the quiche in Paris was where we ate. Actually, we had it a few times. It was much more creamy than eggy. And she was used to more high protein and less used to like high fat. And she got so sick. So this often happens with Pitta, is if they eat something, if they eat rancid oil or they eat foods that are just too oily, because their nature is already oily, their body will just expel it. So she felt like she was going to throw up. She didn't throw up, but then she had the runs, right? And that's a pretty typical response for a Pitta that's eating a diet that's a little too oily. You'll notice like they need a blander diet. They need more clean, substantive food. Pittas are really sensitive to chemicals. And so foods that are more processed or more chemical in nature or GMO in nature, genetically modified foods, not, like a Pitta type will not be, not that any type will be able to thrive on that diet, but a Pitta type might be hypersensitive to that. I noticed this with essential oils. Like there's a whole movement, especially in the raw foods world, around using essential oils in foods. And my Pitta, like I get a headache just from smelling essential oils a lot of the time. I'm super, super sensitive that way. And Pittas will have this kind of, like the more aware they become, the more sensitive they get to certain foods. And they'll tend to like us, the more awake a Pitta is, the more they're eating a clean, simpler diet. Like one of my favorite meals, I think, is just as a good Pitta Kapha balancing meal. So I'll take like a flat bread or like a tostada, a non-fried tostada with whole grains in it. And I'll put hummus on it, or I'll put half an avocado just in slices on it. And I'll put a little bit of sauerkraut on it. And sauerkraut in excess will aggravate Pitta and Kapha, but in just the right amount will just enhance digestion and make the avocado or the hummus, which is a little more dense, has a little bit more fat in it. It'll make that easier to digest. So just like very simple foods like that, for some people you might be like, that doesn't sound good at all. I love it. I might slice some cucumbers or shred some carrots and like build a salad on top of that. Another like great food for Pitta types is simply soaked almonds, raw almonds, and then you peel the skin off them. Now, when you take that, if they're organic almonds, it's such a clean, super sattvic form of protein and fat. And for a Pitta type who's trying to get more oomph, and say for breakfast, you might make an oatmeal, and you could use the steel cut oats or regular whole oats, and then add some of those chopped almonds to it, those blanch chopped almonds. And what you'll notice is like you just get that Sama Agni where you're not hangry, you're able to have very calm, clear, smooth energy for hours. You're getting just really good, clean sources of protein and fat. All right, on to Kapha. So what is the Ayurvedic diet for Kaphas? So Kaphas, again, their digestion, well, actually, let me back up. So Vata accumulates in the colon. So anything that's too airy, they'll get bloated and gassy. Pitta accumulates in the small intestine. So anything that's too fiery, like hot sauce, they'll tend to get the runs from because there's already a lot of bile in their small intestine. And Kapha accumulates in the stomach, and it's mucus. So we've got gas, bile, and mucus. And these are other actually translations for Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, or the forces as they go out of balance in the body. So the force of mucus, if someone has a lot of mucus in their stomach, and children are in their Kapha time of life. So these doshas also have times of life. Kapha is basically conception through adolescence. Pitta is the adult phase. Vata is the old age phase. So you'll notice like kids are barfers compared to adults or compared to old people. Old people get constipated. Kids are pukers, right? And so when you look at this, there's a lot of Kapha. There's a lot of that mucus in the stomach. Now, a Kapha individual will have more mucus in their stomach in general, which mucus is natural. Like having a mucosal membrane in your stomach, that's moist and thriving, right? It's great. It's great for digestion, but too much of it and the stomach gets heavy and we start to lose our appetite. And then say you put ice cream in there, right? Basically what happens is you have an excess of mucus and the body will then not be able to digest the richness of the ice cream, the fat from it, and it'll just generate more mucus from the ice cream instead of healthy fat tissue or clean, clear energy. The same thing's true with just too much food or too much heavy, dense food, like back to the mac and cheese or the mashed potatoes and gravy or anything that's got that heavier, that fettuccine Alfredo, right? The heavy, creamy foods are super aggravating to kaphas. So what kaphas need to do is also cultivate the opposites, just like the pitta diet looks to the airiness of vata and the substantialness of kapha, and neither of those have a lot of heat in them, and that balances a pitta diet. For a kapha diet, they're looking for the fire of pitta, and they're looking for the wind or that spaciousness of vata. So we're back to that lettuce versus cheese analogy, where the vata type needs the heavier, denser proteins and fats. The kapha type needs a lot more of the taste of bitter and pungent and astringent. So for them to eat big salads or roasted Brussels sprouts, they could eat a whole plate of roasted cauliflower, and that would just actually be fantastic. A little bit of olive oil, salt, pepper, roast in the oven, maybe add a little bit of spice to it. Could even add a little chili powder, right? And like that, then you've got the vata and the pitta, and it awakens the kapha, and the kapha person just feels light and clear and clean from that. So the kaphas really have to worry, about just eating foods that taste comforting. It's the comfort food category that gets the kapha types in trouble. And they got to experiment with what actually makes them feel great. So a lot of these more like these lighter foods that they're less attracted to are great. The salads, spicy soups that are not cream based are also great. A kapha person, like when they look at their plate, they should have like a little bit of protein and fat, but the majority of it should be vegetables. And often what we find is like the vatas are the ones that are eating the majority of vegetables, and they need actually more substance. They need more protein and they need more fat. They need a little bit more grounding to weigh them down. So it's, I think these tips are somewhat helpful. It's when you actually look at like what is nature doing seasonally in your ecosystem, that's where you get the biggest insights from Ayurveda. It's like we don't have to pay that much attention to what's on the, kapha yes list or the kapha no list. Like to me, all that's way too disconnected. It's way too mind over matter. What we want to do is let the body feed itself, get more matter over mind. Most of us have way too much information in our brains about how to eat. And I'd rather not rely on our brains about how to eat, but like build body awareness, build body wisdom, body intelligence about what to eat. So the body is physical. It's part of, it's part of nature. And if you notice the season, so whatever season it is, wherever you are on the planet right now, and what's going on, there's certain energies that are dominant. So if it's winter time, say it's getting towards the end of winter, the energies are more kapha. They're heavy, they're dense, cool, cloudy. There's moisture, right? Maybe there's an accumulation of snow, or maybe the ground is wet from rain. And these energies, right? If we eat a diet, say we have ice cream. We were joking around, me and my nephew. He could not get over that they were selling ice cream at the ski hill in the lodge. Like we came in from like a blizzard and he's like, they're selling ice cream. I'm like, I know, it's totally insane. They should be selling hot chocolate, and it should be Mexican hot chocolate where they actually put in the cinnamon and they put in, a pinch of cloves or a little bit of ginger, or they spice it up, right? That makes sense. Ice cream is going to lead someone to getting a cold because their Agni, their digestive fire, can't process it. It gets overwhelmed, and then it turns into mucus, and the mucus it attracts viruses and bacteria, and then you have an infection, and now all of a sudden there's a sinus infection or strep throat or a lung infection, and we're like in a mystery of how we got it. Well, maybe we shouldn't have eaten the ice cream when it was snowing out, Right. And that's really, to me, how the Ayurvedic diet works. We think seasonally. So but at the end of winter, when it feels like you've put on like an extra sweater of fat on your body, like you want to eat lighter. You want to spice it up, having like a spicy Thai soup that doesn't have the coconut cream in it, the other kind, right? That's chicken broth based. Having broth based spicy soups, amazing for the end of winter. Having oatmeal with spices in it, amazing, as opposed to pancakes with maple syrup, which will clog up the mucosal lining of the stomach. So when we're eating seasonally, by the end of winter, we're wanting to eat lighter. A lot of people actually get anorexia, and I don't mean anorexia nervosa, that imbalance that we did an episode on a few months ago. I'm talking about just actually loss of appetite. It's like the food blahs, where you don't know what to eat. You're not really hungry for anything. The rule of thumb is sip hot water until you're really clear about what feels nourishing to you. That's a sign when you have those food blahs of like, I don't really know what to eat. Food's not that exciting. I'm in a food rut. If you're in a food rut, sip hot water until the intelligence of your Agni, the intelligence of your digestive fire is burned through the mucus and you're aware of what to eat. That's for kaphas. That's for people carrying a little bit of extra. For vatas, you still want to eat regularly. All right, so as we go through spring, same thing. Like the kapha types will eat more now. Sprouts, more salads, more raw foods as the earth warms up. Then we go into summertime. As summer picks up, lots of quick crops become available, right? First we might have the strawberries, and then we might have the lettuces that start to pop up, all the little leafy greens that start to come out of the earth. We have all the microgreens, baby greens. We have the baby roots, those little baby carrots, baby beets, all that stuff, right? Quick energy food that actually cools the body. It starts to cleanse the tissue of the heavier, more dense foods that we ate in the wintertime. As we move through summer, the food becomes more substantial, but it's also very green. It's all naturally cooling. It's astringent and bitter. Those are the tastes of green. And it's sweet. Those are all the sweet fruits and the sweet roots that start growing towards the end of summer. So it's a pretty raw or lightly cooked diet in summer, and that keeps the body chill. The digestive fire in summer, we don't want it to be strong and deep and insulated. We actually want it to be light. We can actually eat more frequently in the summer, whereas in the winter is a better season for intermittent fasting. So then as we get into fall, things just start to dry up. The leaves start to get dry and crispy and crunchy as they accumulate on the ground, right? There's no more leafy greens that are fresh. The plants push all their energy down into their roots. And this is the time to harvest those deep roots, the squashes, the pumpkins. It's a great time to harvest the nuts, press the oils. And so we start to go into a more oily, higher fat diet in the fall. We also get more into that creamy diet that the kaphas love. So finally, yes, you can have your creamy soups. It's great for fall to have more substantial food that's still in that liquidy medium, that's still spice, liquidy, oily. That's really great for balancing vata in the fall, so we don't get constipated, so we don't get dried out. It's also the time for lots of apples and apple pie and baked apples and stewed apples, and all that helps. It's high in pectin, so the laxative energy keeps vata moving down in the body, so we don't get backed up. We don't get stagnation as we're transitioning from a lighter diet into a heavier diet. All right, that's my take on what is the Ayurvedic diet. If you want to really study Ayurveda with me on the self-healing, family healing, or pro-healer journey, go to yogahealer.com/Ayurveda, and you'll go through a little free course to see if you're right for our membership course. And if so, we'll be talking to you soon. Again, this is Kate Stillman with Yoga Healer in the Ayurveda series. Namaste and have a great day.